Your son shouldn't be riding that bike on the sidewalk, Denise Crowley barked, standing on my driveway with her clipboard like a badge of authority. The late afternoon sun caught in her perfect curls, but her eyes were sharp, predatory. My 10-year-old Eli limped toward the porch, arm in a sling, and Denise didn't flinch. I think you need to back off, I said, keeping my voice steady. The hum of cicadas filled the space between us. He's fine. He's just getting stronger after the cast. Denise stepped closer, tapping the clipboard. The HOA rules are clear. Bikes are prohibited on common walkways. And the injury, well, frankly, that's on you. She tilted her head, smirk tugging at her lips. I felt my jaw tighten. My hand brushed against the holster at my hip, a reflex from years on the job. Denise, he's 10, and you broke his arm last week by shoving him during the community garden incident. You do not get to lecture me about rules. Her smile flickered. Careful, Sheriff. I'm just doing my duty. Someone has to enforce... Your duty? I cut her off. Your duty almost sent my kid to the ER. You hit a child, Denise. That's assault. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. The rustle of leaves, Eli gripping the porch railing, the distant bark of a dog. Then Denise's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and, for the first time, hesitation flickered in her eyes. But she masked it immediately. What would you do if your neighbor weaponized every rule, every authority against your family? I asked the camera I'd set up on the porch for the neighborhood live stream. The red recording light blinked, reflecting in Denise's wide eyes. Hit subscribe, because this gets worse before it gets better. I let the pause hang, my chest tightened with anger and disbelief. Then I exhaled slowly. Let me back up and tell you how this started. 3 weeks earlier, I hadn't imagined that a simple neighborhood dispute could escalate into a full-blown nightmare. My name's Jack Reynolds. I'm a contractor, a veteran, and yes, I'm the sheriff in this county. My life has always been about protecting people, my family, my community. But even with decades of experience, nothing could have prepared me for Denise Crowley, the HOA vice president who wielded rules like weapons. Eli had always been a spirited kid, bright, curious, and fearless. That's why I built the ramp outside our house after he broke his arm last summer while playing at the park. My wife, Laura, watched him tirelessly, balancing work and worry while I coordinated construction projects and patrols. Our front porch became our safe haven, a symbolic place of security and family life. That porch had seen birthdays, scraped knees, late-night talks, and quiet triumphs. Then Denise Crowley decided it was her mission to dominate every inch of our property. First, it was complaints about the ramp, which she claimed violated, aesthetic regulations. Then she escalated to inspections, threatening fines, citations, and unbelievably physically confronting my son at the community garden, breaking his arm, the same arm now in a sling. I remember the night it happened vividly. The metallic clink of tools, the crunch of gravel underfoot, Denise's voice shouting, and the sickening crack as Eli fell. I still taste the copper of panic, hear the squeal of my brakes as I raced to the ER, and the helplessness, no, the fury, when I realized this wasn't an accident. Denise wasn't just enforcing rules, she was asserting power. That's when I knew it wasn't going to be a normal HOA dispute. This was personal. My profession had trained me to respond under pressure, to analyze threats, to act decisively. My role as sheriff gave me authority. But here, in my own neighborhood, under the pretense of HOA rules, I was suddenly the target. And yet, despite all that, I set up the live stream on the porch that day. I wanted the world to see the truth, to see the injustice, the hypocrisy, the cruelty cloaked in civility. And now, watching Denise Crowley hover like a hawk over my injured son, I realized the fight wasn't just about rules or fines. It was about protecting what mattered most: family, safety, and the principle that no one, not even an HOA official, could get away with harming a child. The next morning, our street felt tense, like the air itself was holding its breath. Denise Crowley had left her clipboard on my lawn with a single passive-aggressive note: second violation, unsafe property practices, immediate compliance required. I crumpled it in my hand, hearing the crackle echo louder than her words. Eli sat on the porch steps, sucking on an ice pack, still wincing. "Dad, she's coming back, isn't she?" His voice trembled, the usual spark dimmed. I knelt beside him, pressing my hand to his shoulder. Not if I can help it, buddy. Not if I can help it. Across the street, I noticed a figure lingering near the mailbox. Margaret Lynn, one of the older neighbors. She had that indecisive shuffle, the kind that betrayed someone torn between loyalty and fear. Margaret had always been friendly with the HOA board, often smiling at their antics in a way that suggested she agreed more than she admitted. But there was hesitation in the way she watched Denise, lingering a beat too long before quickly looking away. I straightened, squinting. "Margaret, hey, can we talk?" She started, caught off guard. "Oh, Jack, morning. Come over," I said. "I need someone honest right now. Not polite, not scared, honest." Reluctantly, she crossed the street, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. The heat shimmered off the asphalt, the scent of freshly mown grass mixing with the faint smell of gasoline from the leaf blowers a few houses down. "Look, Jack," she said softly, "I don't want to get involved. Denise, she's powerful. She knows people, knows rules, knows how to bully kids and parents," I interrupted, my voice low but cutting. "Margaret, my son's arm is in a sling because of her. She didn't just break HOA rules, she broke the law." Her eyes flicked to Eli, guilt passing across her face like a shadow. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I saw her. That day at the garden, she shoved him. I mean, nobody should have." I nodded, encouraging her. "That's exactly what I'm saying. I need to know what you saw, every detail." Margaret swallowed, fumbling with her hands. She didn't want anyone watching. She told me to look the other way. I didn't know what to do. I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't tell anyone." "I know," I said gently. "But now you can help. You saw her. That's important." I glanced toward the street again. Denise was nowhere in sight, but I could feel her plotting. She thrived on intimidation. The only way to beat that is preparation, evidence, and, when necessary, authority. Margaret hesitated, then nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. Her conflicted stance was clear. She feared Denise, but part of her wanted to do what was right. That hesitation, that flicker of courage, could become the key we needed later. We stayed on the porch for a few minutes, letting the cicadas hum around us, listening to the faint squeak of a swing in a neighbor's yard. I realized that even with my law enforcement training, the neighborhood itself was a maze of power dynamics and unspoken fears. Denise Crowley wasn't just a bully. She had a network, and the HOA rules were her weapon. "I need you to remember everything," I said, locking eyes with Margaret. "Every shove, every glare, every time she tried to make you feel like you couldn't speak up. That's evidence. And if she pushes again, I want you ready to step forward. You don't have to like me, or even want to be involved, but truth matters more than fear." She nodded again, more firmly this time. I could see the internal struggle fading slightly, replaced by resolve. It wouldn't be easy. She'd risk gossip, backlash, maybe worse. But knowing someone like Margaret was starting to choose honesty gave me a sliver of hope. As Margaret walked back across the street, I watched Eli tighten his grip on the ice pack, the boy still wincing but trying to smile. I whispered under my breath, more to myself than him. "This neighborhood isn't just ours to live in, it's ours to protect, and I'm not backing down." The first escalation had already begun. Denise Crowley had crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. With Margaret's hesitant but growing support, I realized that winning this fight would require more than anger. It would require strategy, patience, and using every tool at my disposal as a sheriff and a father. By midweek, the neighborhood felt like a pressure cooker. Denise Crowley didn't just stop at notes or passive threats, she escalated. I saw her parked across the street in her black SUV, clipboard in hand, watching Eli wobble on crutches as he tried to retrieve the newspaper. Her eyes darted between him and me, calculating, like a predator sizing up prey. "Stay close, buddy," I muttered, keeping my hand near my sidearm, even though I hoped it wouldn't come to that. The gravel underfoot crunched with every step I took, loud enough that Denise flinched, though she pretended otherwise. Margaret appeared again, edging along the sidewalk. She kept glancing nervously toward Denise, then toward me, her hands clasped tight. She stopped halfway, glancing around like she was hiding from the world. "Margaret," I called softly, trying not to draw attention. Come here." Her steps were hesitant, almost hesitant enough to stumble over themselves. Sweat glimmered on her forehead in the late morning sun. "Jack, look, I don't know if I can—" "You saw her, Margaret. You saw what she did to Eli. You know it was wrong." My voice was calm but firm, and the subtle tremor of urgency made it clear I meant every word. "I need you to tell me everything, right now, even if it scares you." She swallowed hard, then took a deep breath. Okay, I saw her push him. I heard her yell about how kids like him should know their place. And then she laughed after he fell. I froze. I didn't move. I placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're human. Most people freeze in the moment. What matters is that you remember, and now you have a choice to speak up." Margaret's eyes darted to Denise, parked like a vulture across the street, then back to me. The conflict was clear in every subtle twitch, shoulders tense, fingers gripping the strap of her bag, lips pressed together, as if holding back words she wanted to say but feared. "You don't know what she's capable of," she whispered. She can make things miserable for people, really miserable." "I know," I said quietly, "and that's why we need to be careful, but hiding now only gives her power." The air between us was thick, scented faintly with freshly cut grass and gasoline from the leaf blowers down the street. The faint metallic tang of the clipboard Denise had abandoned yesterday seemed to linger. Margaret's voice dropped further. I want to do the right thing, Jack. I really do. But what if she comes after me?" I nodded, understanding her fear, because I felt it too, but differently. I was a sheriff. I had authority, training, and experience. She had nothing but conscience and courage, and that courage, if nurtured, could tip the balance. "Then we protect ourselves strategically," I said. "You stay close, document what you see, and tell the truth if asked. You're not alone. And yes, it's scary, but doing nothing is worse. Trust me. I'll make sure. You're safe." Margaret's shoulders relaxed fractionally. She still hesitated, her fear palpable in every subtle motion. But there was a spark now, a flicker of willingness. She had become a conflicted witness, caught between fear and morality. That flicker could become our lever if guided correctly. As she walked back toward her house, I turned to Eli. He was fidgeting with his sling, squinting toward the street. "Dad, what if she comes again?" "Then we'll be ready, Eli. We'll be ready," I said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on his good arm. "But right now, the first victory is knowing we're not alone. Some people see the truth, even if they're scared. That's where hope starts." I glanced toward Denise's SUV, still parked like a shadow on the street, and felt the tension coil in my chest. She had escalated, yes. But with Margaret's reluctant awareness now on our side, we had an opening, small, fragile, but significant. Evidence, witness, strategy. It was the first step in taking back the neighborhood, and so the chessboard was set. Denise was the queen, aggressive and unpredictable. Margaret was a pawn, hesitant but potentially decisive. And me? I was the player who would move carefully, decisively, and relentlessly. Because once you cross the line and hurt a child, there's no coming back. And I intended to make sure everyone, including Denise Crowley, knew that. By Friday, Denise Crowley had taken escalation to a new level. She showed up with a man I later learned was a security consultant for the HOA, tall, broad-shouldered, sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sun, and a clipboard clutched like a weapon. He didn't introduce himself. He simply stepped onto my driveway as if it were his right. "Sir, I need to inspect the property," he said in a flat, rehearsed tone. "HOA regulations require a visual assessment of all potential hazards." I felt Eli stiffen behind me, clutching his sling, eyes wide with fear. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped toward them. "You're not coming onto my property. Not today. Not ever." The man's lips pressed into a thin line, but Denise's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. "Jack, just cooperate. It's procedural. If you refuse, we escalate." "Escalate what? My son's broken arm? My driveway? This is harassment, Denise." I could hear the faint buzz of cicadas, the scrape of leaves in the gentle wind, even the distant laughter of kids from the park. Everything felt hyper-real, amplified by my anger and Eli's discomfort. "Procedures must be followed," Denise said, stepping closer. Her heels clicked sharply against the concrete, a staccato warning. Rules are rules, Jack. You know that. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. Rules don't give you the right to intimidate children, Denise. They don't give you the right to trespass on private property. Step back. The security consultant shifted, glancing at Denise as if waiting for confirmation. Denise smirked briefly, then waved a hand like a conductor, signaling the next move. He didn't budge. I felt my pulse spike. This wasn't just an HOA enforcement issue anymore. It was trespass, intimidation, and blatant abuse of authority. My training as sheriff kicked in. Assess the threat, establish control, and protect the vulnerable. "Eli, come behind me," I whispered, guiding him to the porch. The porch railing, familiar and solid under my grip, became a literal and symbolic shield. My son's safety was my top priority. Margaret appeared again, this time lingering on the sidewalk. I caught her eye. She flinched when Denise's glare swept toward her, but then she nodded ever so slightly, an unspoken signal. She had seen the escalation firsthand and seemed torn between fear and the moral truth she had begun to recognize. That flicker, small as it was, reminded me that even in the shadows of intimidation, honesty could prevail. Denise snapped her fingers. "Jack, you think standing there will protect you? We have authority." "Authority doesn't give you the right to terrorize a child," I said, my voice low, even, but with an edge. I could feel the heat in my chest, the adrenaline sharpening my senses. I surveyed the property, the ramp, the porch, the driveway, all legally constructed, all safe. But more than that, they were ours, symbols of our family, our life, and our resilience. The consultant hesitated, then stepped back slightly, sensing the tension. Denise's smirk faltered. I took a slow breath, letting the moment stretch, showing that I was prepared, calm, and observant. This was the opening I needed. I wasn't going to confront them with violence. I didn't need to. But professional observation could be a weapon. Every move Denise made, every intimidation tactic I noted in my mind. Angles, timing, behavior patterns, and evidence of overreach. The moment they tried to cross legal boundaries, I would be ready. I finally spoke, letting my words cut through the summer heat. "You've made your point, Denise, but you will not intimidate us. Not today, not ever. This ends now unless you want to face the consequences of crossing a sheriff and a father." Denise's face tightened. The consultant shifted again, uncomfortable under my scrutiny. Margaret's eyes met mine once more, and I could see the conflict slowly resolve into clarity. Fear still lingered, but truth was breaking through. The two of them left eventually, Denise muttering about protocol and the consultant dragging his heels. Eli exhaled, clutching my arm. The porch had held. My son was safe. And in that moment, I realized that observation, patience, and careful documentation were going to be our first tools in taking back the neighborhood, and in holding Denise accountable. Because now, every violation, every intimidation, every overstep would be recorded, analyzed, and countered. And we had an ally in Margaret, hesitant though she might be. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. Saturday morning brought a quiet calm over the neighborhood, but I knew better. Denise Crowley thrived in the quiet before the storm, and I wasn't about to let her get the drop on us. Eli was inside, drawing superheroes on the kitchen table, his good arm moving swiftly while the other remained in a sling. I watched him for a moment, the soft scratch of pencil on paper mixing with the distant drone of lawnmowers. Then I turned my attention to the front yard. The previous day's standoff had left me observant, calculating. Denise's behavior wasn't random. It followed patterns. I scanned the street from my porch, binoculars in hand, noting how her SUV had returned at roughly the same time each day, parking strategically across from my driveway. Her movements were deliberate, rehearsed, a silent message of control. I started recording everything: the timing, the vehicle, the angle she approached from, even the minor details, how she tapped her clipboard 3 times before speaking, the exact pitch of her voice when issuing threats. Every action was data, every pattern was a piece of evidence. And then, I saw it. A delivery truck parked a few houses down, just long enough to obscure the view of my driveway from the street. Denise emerged from the shadow, scanning the neighborhood, then slinking toward the alley behind the community garden. Something about the way she moved, hesitant, cautious, caught my attention. She wasn't simply patrolling, she was surveilling, making sure no one noticed her maneuver. I grabbed my phone and recorded discreetly. Her SUV remained visible, but Denise herself ducked behind the corner, peering around like she was expecting someone. Or something. I adjusted my binoculars, heart tightening, and caught the moment she used a small, handheld device to manipulate the lock on the community garden gate. She didn't have permission. That device bypassed security entirely, something I recognized from my training. Unbelievable, I muttered under my breath. The neighborhood wasn't just being harassed, it was being violated. She had tools and knowledge to skirt rules and security protocols. Illegal access, plain and simple. And no one had noticed. Not the HOA board, not the neighbors, no one. I recorded the entire sequence. The approach, the manipulation of the lock, the careful glance to ensure no witnesses. Then she slipped inside the garden and disappeared from view. The delivery truck pulled away, leaving the area empty again, as if nothing had happened. But I had seen it all. Every illicit move. Margaret appeared on the sidewalk again, her eyes widening as she noticed my intense focus. "Jack, what are you—" "Watch," I said quietly, lowering my binoculars just enough for her to see. "This is how she operates. She doesn't follow the rules. She bypasses them." Her lips pressed. Together, fear and comprehension battling across her face. I knew she was controlling, but this is illegal, I said, voice low but firm. Trespassing, unauthorized access, intimidation. Every move she makes leaves a trail. And now, we have it. Margaret nodded slowly. Her hesitation was still there, but determination flickered behind her eyes. "So, we have proof?" "Exactly," I said, handing her my binoculars. "Not just complaints or secondhand stories, hard evidence. And this," I tapped my recording device, "is only the beginning. The more she tries to push, the more evidence she leaves." The adrenaline in my veins surged. I could feel the weight of authority, not just as sheriff, but as a father. This evidence wouldn't just protect Eli and me, it would expose Denise's pattern, her abuse of HOA power, and her willingness to break the law to intimidate neighbors. Eli called from the kitchen. "Dad, can I come watch?" I waved him over, motioning him to stay safe on the porch. The moment was almost surreal, the hum of the neighborhood, the occasional squeak of a swing from a nearby yard, the distant bark of a dog. But beneath it all was clarity. Observation and evidence were our weapons now. Professional expertise turned into leverage. Margaret watched as I summarized the sequence, her conflicted stance slowly giving way to purpose. The first discovery had been made, the first real step in our strategy. Denise Crowley might think she controlled the neighborhood, but every step, every manipulation, every violation had been recorded. And now, it was only a matter of time before that knowledge became power. By Sunday morning, the neighborhood felt deceptively calm, but I knew better. Denise Crowley thrived on control, and calm was only a lull before the next storm. Eli was inside, coloring in his superhero book, humming softly despite his still-healing arm. I stayed on the porch, binoculars in hand, scanning the street like a predator mapping prey. The moment Denise's SUV rolled into view, my pulse quickened. She parked deliberately, engine ticking in the morning heat, then stepped out, clipboard in hand. But this time, she didn't approach directly. She circled, peering at windows, glancing at corners of the yard, calculating angles as if rehearsing her next intimidation. I quietly set up a second camera at the side of the porch, discreet, angled to catch every approach from the street. The hum of cicadas mingled with the faint creak of the porch swing, but I barely noticed. My focus was singular: track, observe, record, and analyze. Margaret appeared at the edge of her driveway again, wringing her hands clearly torn. I called to her softly, "Stay close. Watch and note what she does. This time, don't hesitate. Details matter." Her nod was hesitant, but she moved closer, pencil and notepad in hand. Even in fear, she was beginning to embrace observation as a shield against Denise's intimidation. That flicker of courage would be essential. Denise lingered at the property line, tapping her clipboard, muttering under her breath about regulations and violations. Then, almost imperceptibly, She pulled a small electronic device from her pocket and approached the side gate to the community garden. I tensed. Through the binoculars, I saw her press the device against the gate's lock. It clicked softly, too soft to hear from the porch, but obvious visually. The gate swung open. Denise stepped inside, glancing back to make sure no one was watching, though Margaret's wide eyes betrayed that she was. I hit record on both cameras, documenting the exact timing, the angles, her motions, and the unauthorized use of the device. Every detail mattered: the make of the device, the sequence of actions, even the subtle pause she took to ensure no one was watching. This wasn't just a violation, it was a pattern, a repeatable, observable pattern. Margaret whispered, "She's doing it again. She's breaking the rules." "Yes," I said quietly, scanning the rest of the property. "And now, we have the proof we need. She can't claim ignorance or accident. This is deliberate." For the next 30 minutes, I remained on high alert, noting Denise's every step through the binoculars, recording everything. Every patrol, every approach, every attempt to assert control became a piece of the puzzle. Margaret jotted furiously, her conflicted demeanor slowly giving way to resolve. She still feared Denise, but seeing the evidence firsthand gave her courage. When Denise finally left, I reviewed the recordings. The pattern was clear: repeated surveillance, repeated trespass, repeated intimidation, all executed with tools and devices bypassing legal protocols. She had weaponized the HOA, and now, thanks to meticulous observation, we had documentation she couldn't dispute. Eli ran to me, sling bouncing slightly. "Dad, did she leave?" "She did, buddy, and we caught it all," I said, ruffling his hair. "We're going to be ready next time." Margaret lingered on the sidewalk, hesitant but determined. "Jack, what do we do with all this?" "We wait, we document, and we act when the time is right," I said. "Right now, this evidence is our leverage. It's not just about fines or rules. It's about holding her accountable for breaking the law, for threatening our family, and for hurting kids. And trust me, Margaret, you're part of this too. Your notes, your observations, they matter. You've already helped more than you realize." As the sun shifted toward afternoon, the heat rising in waves from the asphalt, I felt a quiet satisfaction. The first phase of evidence gathering was complete. Professional observation had turned into a strategic weapon, and now we could begin shaping a response that Denise Crowley would never see coming. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt control, not arrogance, not vengeance, but clarity. Observation, documentation, and careful preparation would become the backbone of our counter-strategy. And with Margaret starting to step into her role as a conflicted but crucial witness, the tide was beginning to shift. Because when the rules are weaponized against your family, sometimes the only way to fight back is with patience, precision, and proof, and I had both. Monday morning arrived with a tense stillness. The street was quiet, but I knew Denise Crowley's type. Quiet didn't mean inactive. Eli was inside, bouncing a foam ball against the wall, testing the strength of his healing arm. I stayed on the porch, scanning the neighborhood, binoculars ready. Every shadow, every movement could signal Denise's next move. Margaret appeared at her mailbox, hands gripping the edge, eyes darting toward my porch. I waved her over. She hesitated, caught between fear and the moral truth she had been nursing for days, then slowly crossed the street. Her usual indecision was tempered with determination now. "I saw her last night," Margaret whispered as she joined me on the porch, voice low, almost urgent. She used that device again at the community garden. I didn't tell anyone because I was scared." I nodded, keeping my tone calm. "That's okay. You're telling me now, and that counts. Every piece of information helps build the bigger picture." Her eyes flicked nervously toward the street. She's been recording some neighbors. Not all, but certain families. I think she's keeping tabs on anyone who might resist her." My chest tightened. That was new. Escalation beyond property violations, beyond intimidation. Surveillance of neighbors was illegal in multiple ways, and it meant Denise was playing a deeper, more dangerous game. I made a mental note. Evidence of this behavior could be pivotal in exposing her abuse of HOA power. "Did you see her device or know what it looked like?" I asked quietly. Margaret pulled a small notebook from her bag, pages full of sketches, scribbles, and notes. I tried to draw it. It's handheld, black, rectangular, with a small screen. She presses a button and it unlocks gates, maybe even doors. I don't know all the functions, but I've seen her use it multiple times. I leaned closer, examining the sketches. This was exactly what I needed. Professional expertise wasn't just my training. It was observation, pattern recognition, and understanding tools of influence and manipulation. With Margaret's first-hand accounts, I could connect the dots, identify the device, and prepare to expose her illegal activity. "You did the right thing by telling me," I said, giving her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "This information could be critical. It's the missing piece. With your notes and my recordings, we can show a consistent pattern of illegal behavior. You're helping protect the neighborhood, Margaret. That's huge." She hesitated, glancing toward the empty street, then nodded slowly. I want to do the right thing. I just didn't know if anyone would believe me." "I believe you," I said firmly. "And when the time comes, the proof will speak louder than fear. For now, we document, we observe, and we prepare." Margaret's conflicted stance, visible in the way she wrung her hands and adjusted her bag repeatedly, shifted slightly with each word. Her courage was fragile but growing, a crucial ally for what was to come. We reviewed her notes and compared them with my recordings. Every action Denise had taken, the pushes, the intimidation, the device, the repeated violations, aligned with our observations. Patterns emerged, undeniable and precise. "See this?" I said, pointing to the timestamps and sketches. "This proves she's not enforcing rules. She's abusing authority. She targets, intimidates, and surveils. That's our leverage, and you helped create it." Margaret's lips pressed together, a quiet determination in her eyes now. "So, we can stop her? We're not just stopping her, we're documenting it so the HOA, the neighbors, and if necessary, the law, can hold her accountable. You've already made a difference. Your honesty just turned into power." Eli peeked around the corner, curiosity in his eyes. "Dad, is she really that bad?" I smiled faintly, ruffling his hair. "She's bad enough, buddy, but we're ready. We've got proof, we've got allies, and we're not backing down." Margaret nodded, her conflicted stance finally giving way to resolve. She had crossed the line from fearful bystander to critical participant. That shift made all the difference, because when the truth has witnesses willing to step forward, even the most brazen abuser can be held accountable. And Denise Crowley had just met her first real challenge. Tuesday morning, and the neighborhood felt deceptively normal. Birds chirped, sprinklers hissed, and the faint scent of fresh-cut grass floated in the air. But I knew better. Denise Crowley's calm was never genuine. It was a warning. I poured a cup of coffee and settled at the kitchen table, my laptop open, videos and notes spread before me like a tactical map. Eli sat beside me, doodling superheroes on a scrap of paper. "Dad, are we going to beat her?" I glanced down at him, smiling faintly. "We're going to make sure she can't hurt anyone else. And yes, that includes you." I reviewed the recordings from the previous days, the angles, the timing, the precise moments Denise used her device on gates she had no permission to access. Margaret's sketches were laid beside the clips, annotated with times, locations, and behaviors. The combination was telling a story that no one could ignore. Intentional, repeated, and illegal HOA overreach. I leaned back in my chair, thinking through the next moves. Professional expertise. Wasn't just about observation, it was about leveraging patterns, predicting behavior, and controlling outcomes. Denise's patterns were clear now. She relied on intimidation, timing, and surveillance to enforce compliance. But with the evidence, I could anticipate her, document every violation, and expose her systematically. Margaret appeared at the door, hesitating before stepping inside. "Jack, are you really going to use this?" Her voice was quiet, hesitant but curious. I gestured to the evidence spread across the table. "Yes, not to retaliate, but to protect. The HOA rules are supposed to keep us safe, not give her a weapon. We're going to use her own behavior against her, professionally and legally." Her eyes flicked over the files and videos. "And you think she can't deny it?" I shook my head. "Not when it's documented, time-stamped, and corroborated by witnesses. This isn't opinion, it's fact, and fact is powerful." I outlined the plan as clearly as I could. Step 1. Continue observation discreetly, ensuring every action Denise takes is recorded. Step 2. Cross-reference recordings with Margaret's observations and notes. Step 3. Identify any procedural or legal violations, especially repeated or malicious acts. Step 4. Compile everything into a dossier that leaves no room for denial. Eli, I said, catching my son's gaze, you don't need to understand all of it right now, but know this. Sometimes doing the right thing takes preparation, watching, documenting, and waiting for the right moment. Margaret nodded slowly, her conflicted demeanor giving way to focus. So, what do I do? Keep observing, keep noting, don't engage directly, don't confront her. Let me handle the escalation. Your role is crucial because your notes corroborate what we are recording. They turn suspicion into undeniable proof. I felt a surge of clarity. The neighborhood had become a chessboard. Denise was a queen moving aggressively, and we were carefully positioning our pieces. Every surveillance recording, every sketch, every time-stamped observation was a strategic advantage. Professional expertise wasn't just observation, it was orchestration, and for the first time, I had control over the board. I reviewed the footage again, slow-motioning the clip where Denise bypassed the garden gate with the device. I annotated every micro-movement, her eyes scanning for witnesses, her fingers pressing buttons, the subtle hesitation that showed she knew the act was wrong, but did it anyway. Those moments, repeated across days, were enough to establish intent, pattern, and malice. Exactly what we needed for our case. Margaret leaned closer, whispering, "It's like a puzzle." "Exactly," I said. "And every piece counts. One mistake from her, one illegal move, and we'll have the power to protect the neighborhood. And more importantly, to protect Eli." I glanced out the window at the porch, railing where Eli often played, sunlight glinting off the wood. It symbolized safety, family, and the line I would never let Denise cross again. Margaret's notes, my recordings, the patterns we'd identified, they were all pieces of a counter-strategy designed to expose the abuse without a single reckless move. By the time the coffee was cold, I had a clear map in my mind, step by step, observation by observation. The HOA's misuse of power would be undeniable. And Denise Crowley, the woman who thought rules gave her a license to intimidate, was about to find herself trapped by her own arrogance. This was preparation. This was strategy. And the next moves would decide everything. By Wednesday, I was ready. The recordings, Margaret's notes, and my own observations had formed a complete map of Denise Crowley's behavior. Every step she took, every intimidation tactic, every illegal maneuver was cataloged. The HOA had unknowingly handed me a blueprint for exposing her. Eli sat at the kitchen table, coloring with his good arm, humming a little tune. I kept one eye on him and one on the street. Denise's SUV was already parked across from my driveway, engine ticking faintly in the morning heat. She lingered near the curb, clipboard ready, scanning, calculating. Margaret appeared again, lingering at the edge of her driveway. Her usual nervous shifting was still there, but now her movements had purpose. She had begun to see herself as part of the counter-strategy, not just a scared witness. "Jack, she's here," she whispered. I nodded. "Good, let's see what she does." Through binoculars, I observed Denise circling the property, her eyes flicking to the side gate, then to the windows. I adjusted my camera angle, capturing every motion. I had positioned the second camera perfectly to record both the driveway and the gate. Any attempt at intimidation or illegal access would be documented. Denise approached the garden gate, device in hand. I recognized the subtle tension in her shoulders. She was confident, but unaware she was being recorded from multiple angles. Her pattern was predictable, and I had leveraged it. "Margaret," I whispered, "watch closely. Note every movement, every glance, everything unusual." She scribbled furiously, glancing occasionally at me. Okay, I see it." Denise pressed the device against the lock. Click. The gate opened. She stepped inside, scanning for witnesses, just like the previous times. But this time, we had multiple cameras capturing her actions from every possible angle. Margaret's notes corroborated each move. I remained calm, letting the moment stretch. Patience was key. Every intimidation, every violation, was becoming part of a pattern that could not be denied. Professional expertise had turned observation into leverage. After a few minutes, Denise lingered, muttering under her breath about violations and enforcing regulations. She didn't notice the second camera nor Margaret quietly documenting the timestamps and the exact device she used. I spoke softly to Margaret. This is it. Every action she's taken is now recorded and cross-referenced. We don't need to confront her directly yet. The evidence speaks for itself. Margaret swallowed, nodding. So, we just wait? Yes, wait, observe, document. Every overstep she takes adds weight to the case. She's playing right into our hands. I felt a surge of satisfaction. The chessboard was set. Denise, the queen, moved aggressively, unknowingly exposing herself. Margaret was a pawn-turned-vital witness, and I was the player orchestrating the strategy. Each move was calculated, every reaction anticipated. Denise finally left, stepping back into her SUV with a frustrated huff. I reviewed the footage immediately, noting the repeated patterns of intimidation, trespass, and misuse of devices. Margaret's notes matched the recordings perfectly. We had a chain of evidence so precise, so undeniable, that Denise could not manipulate or discredit it. Eli peeked around the corner, curious. "Dad, did it work?" I smiled faintly. "It did, buddy. We've got everything we need to make sure she can't do this again. And now, every move she makes strengthens our case." Margaret lingered, conflicted but resolute. "So, we really can stop her?" "Yes," I said. "We're controlling the game now. Observation, documentation, strategy. We're not reacting anymore. We're leading, and Denise doesn't even know it yet." The sun glinted off the porch railing where Eli often played. It symbolized safety, family, and resilience. With Margaret's help and our meticulously documented evidence, the tide was turning. Denise Crowley had underestimated us, and that mistake would be her undoing. The first phase of execution was complete. Professional expertise had transformed observation into action. The next moves would push Denise into exposing her own abuse publicly, and we would be ready. Thursday morning, and the neighborhood seemed to hum with ordinary life. Children on bicycles, sprinklers spraying, the faint aroma of breakfast drifting from open windows. But I knew better. Denise Crowley's calm was an illusion. Every smile, every polite wave, hid her readiness to escalate. And now, we were ready for her. I sat at the kitchen table, Eli beside me coloring, my laptop open. Evidence compiled. Every video, every timestamp, every sketch from Margaret formed a meticulous dossier. Professional observation had transformed into documented proof of repeated intimidation, trespass, and misuse of devices. The next phase required action, strategic, calculated, legal. I called my lawyer, a sharp, methodical professional familiar with HOA regulations and civil protections. "We have documented patterns of harassment, trespass, and unauthorized surveillance," I said, summarizing our findings. "We need formal complaints filed, letters to the HOA board, and, if necessary, notice of legal action, all of it precise, documented, and undeniable." Margaret appeared at the door again, notebook in hand. Her nervous energy had solidified into focus. "Do you want me to share my notes formally?" she asked. "Yes," I said firmly. "Your observations corroborate everything. Legally, your testimony adds weight. It's credible, first-hand, and consistent. That's exactly what we need." I drafted formal letters to the HOA detailing Denise's repeated violations, using exact timestamps, video references, and Margaret's corroborated notes. Each incident was carefully described: the trespass at the community garden, the device used to bypass security, the intimidation toward Eli, and the pattern of repeated harassment. Every word was deliberate, legally precise. Once drafted, I sent copies to our lawyer, the HOA board, and the city's oversight office. Every step taken was documented. Each communication added pressure, creating a paper trail that could not be dismissed. Professional expertise wasn't just in observation. It was in translating evidence into actionable, enforceable legal documentation. Margaret hovered nearby, watching as I organized the files. "Jack, do you think this will work?" "I know it will," I said. "Not because we're aggressive, but because the law and documented evidence are on our side. Denise Crowley has been reckless, and now she's going to face the consequences of that recklessness. Observation alone isn't enough. You need follow-through. This is it. I continued building the dossier, ensuring every detail aligned. Device usage, repeated surveillance, intimidation tactics, timing, and locations. Video frames were time-stamped, angles noted, and every act was cataloged. Margaret cross-checked her notes with mine, confirming sequences, correcting minor discrepancies, and ensuring clarity. Together, we had created a flawless record. Eli glanced up from his drawing. "Dad, will she know?" I shook my head. "Not yet. But soon, she'll realize she's no longer in control. That's the point. When the HOA and authorities see the evidence, her power evaporates, and we've prepared every step to make sure it does." By mid-afternoon, the formal complaints were filed. Copies went to the HOA board, the city oversight office, and the lawyer. I double-checked every timestamp, every note, every video clip. Margaret had transformed from conflicted observer to essential ally. Without her, our case would have gaps. We spent the evening reviewing the evidence, rehearsing potential questions, anticipating counter-arguments, and planning strategic communication. Each scenario was considered: the denial, the deflection, the attempted intimidation. We were ready. As I looked out the window at the quiet street, sunlight glinting off the porch railing, I felt the first real sense of control since Denise's harassment began. The tide was turning. The professional observation, documentation, and legal preparation had created leverage strong enough to challenge her abuse directly. Eli's homework lay forgotten on the table. Margaret's notes spread like battle plans, and I allowed myself a moment to breathe. Every move from here would be deliberate, every step calculated. Denise Crowley had underestimated us, and now, with evidence, authority, and preparation, she was about to pay for that mistake. Friday evening, the HOA board meeting began in the small community hall. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting sharp angles across the room. Neighbors shuffled into folding chairs, murmuring in anticipation. Denise Crowley sat at the head of the table, clipboard in hand, her posture stiff. A practiced smile plastered on her face. I entered quietly, Eli holding my hand, Margaret close behind me. My files and recordings were tucked neatly under my arm. I scanned the room, neighbors whispering, a few skeptical glances toward Denise, but most unaware of the storm about to unfold. Denise noticed us immediately, her smirk faltering for a fraction of a second. She straightened, voice sharp. "Jack Reynolds, I didn't expect you to attend." "I expected to," I said calmly, setting the files on the table. "And I brought the evidence to show exactly why." The murmurs grew louder as I opened my laptop, projecting recordings onto the wall. Video after video played, Denise bypassing the community garden lock, pressing buttons on the unauthorized device, circling properties, her eyes scanning for witnesses. The timestamps and angles made every move undeniable. Margaret's notes were displayed alongside the clips, her sketches matching each action perfectly. Denise's hands gripped the edge of the table. That's selective editing. You're trying to defame me." I shook my head, keeping my voice even. "No, this is every recorded instance over the last week. Multiple angles, multiple sources. Every violation is documented. And neighbors, this isn't opinion. This is fact, and it's consistent." Some murmurs shifted to audible gasps. Margaret, standing beside me, cleared her throat. "I saw it happen. I documented it. I was afraid, but it's true. This is what she's been doing." The room fell silent. Denise's smirk disappeared entirely. Her usual authority, the confidence she wielded over the neighborhood, was cracking under the weight of evidence and witnesses. This is impossible," Denise stammered, glancing at the other board members. "I know it's difficult to hear," I said, voice steady. "But it's true. My son, my neighbors, and I have been targeted repeatedly, and your actions have endangered children, trespassed on private property, and misused HOA authority. That pattern is illegal." One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Another neighbor whispered to the person next to them. Denise's usual dominance evaporated in real time, replaced by panic and disbelief. I turned to the audience, voice projecting. "Neighbors, you have the right to feel safe in your homes. You have the right to follow HOA rules that protect the community, not weaponize it. What you just saw is repeated abuse of that power. This is not enforcement, it's harassment. Eli squeezed my hand, eyes wide but proud. Margaret's hand rested lightly on my arm, a subtle acknowledgement that we had done this together. Denise finally raised her voice, shaking. You can't. This is outrageous. You can try to deny it, I interrupted calmly. But the evidence, timestamps, and corroborated witness statements speak louder than words. Every step, every action has been recorded. And yes, there will be legal consequences if this behavior continues. The room sat in stunned silence. Denise's authority had been completely undermined. Board members began whispering among themselves. Some neighbors approached to express relief, gratitude, or astonishment. Margaret exhaled, a mix of fear and triumph in her eyes. I looked down at Eli, still holding my hand. We did it, buddy. We didn't react. We prepared, we documented, and we acted. That's how you fight someone like her. Denise slumped slightly, muttering, defeated. The entire neighborhood had witnessed her overreach exposed. Authority, when abused, can crumble in the light of truth, and tonight, it had. As we gathered our things and left the hall, sunlight streaming through the windows, I felt the weight lift slightly. The public confrontation had been executed perfectly, strategically, and legally. We had exposed Denise Crowley's abuse and reclaimed the neighborhood's safety, and our family's peace. Saturday morning brought a calm that felt almost surreal. The streets were quiet, the sun glinting off the freshly trimmed lawns. For the first time in days, I could breathe without the tight coil of tension in my chest. Eli ran ahead of me toward the porch, sling bouncing lightly as he adjusted to his newly freed arm. Margaret waved from her driveway, a faint smile replacing her usual hesitance. The neighborhood had witnessed what we had accomplished. The public confrontation, the evidence, the undeniable exposure of Denise Crowley's abuse. Her power had crumbled, her intimidation undone, and the community was finally free from her manipulations. I sank into the porch swing, letting the warmth of the morning sun wash over me. The railing, chipped but steadfast, had become a symbol over the past week, of family, safety, and the line I would never let anyone cross. Every observation, every recording, every carefully documented note had led to this moment. Professional expertise, patience, and preparation had won where reaction alone could not. Margaret stepped closer, holding a cup of coffee, her notebook clutched to her chest. Jack, thank you. For helping us see the truth. For giving us the courage to stand up. I shook my head slightly. You helped just as much. Your observations were critical. Without you documenting what I couldn't see, the pattern wouldn't have been complete. We did this together. Eli ran back, dropping a small action figure into my hand. Dad, we did it, right? Yes, buddy, we did it, I said, ruffling his hair. He smiled, and for the first time in days, the house felt safe. It wasn't just about the victory, it was about reclaiming the security of our home, the peace of our street, and the innocence of Eli's world. Margaret leaned against the railing, exhaling. I still can't believe how brazen she was, thinking she could control everyone without consequences. That's the thing, I said, voice calm but firm. Abuse of authority only works when no one watches closely. Professional observation and evidence change the game. You can't intimidate facts. You can't manipulate documented truth. That's what we did. That's why we won. We sat there quietly for a moment, the hum of the neighborhood carrying the distant laughter of children and the occasional bark of a dog. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and coffee, a combination that, in its ordinary rhythm, felt like triumph. Margaret's eyes softened. Do you think she'll ever learn? I smiled faintly, though there was no malice in it. Maybe, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that she's accountable now, and the neighborhood is safe. That's enough. Eli tugged at my sleeve. Can we tell everyone what happened? In time, I said. Right now, the important thing is that people feel safe and see that standing up works. The truth will spread, and people will remember that intimidation doesn't last. I looked down the street, the symbolic porch railing glinting in the morning light. It had stood through every moment of tension, every confrontation, every escalation. It had been our anchor, our marker of home, and the place where justice was quietly prepared. Margaret shifted, looking toward the homes along the street. Do you think they'll notice? The neighbors? They already have, I said. And next time, they'll act sooner, watch closer, and know they have allies. That's the real victory, empowering others to recognize abuse and protect what matters. Eli leaned against me, tugging my arm. I held him close, feeling the weight lift entirely. Denise Crowley's shadow had been removed from our lives, and the neighborhood's quiet, ordinary rhythm was finally restored. I took a deep breath, glancing at Margaret and Eli. This is what happens when you prepare, observe, and stand firm. Authority can't hide behind fear when evidence is clear and justice is patient. And with that, I looked out over the neighborhood one last time, feeling the sunlight on my face, the warmth of family, and the certainty that we had done what needed to be done. If you've ever felt powerless against someone abusing authority, remember, careful observation, preparation, and truth are your strongest allies. Don't wait for fear to silence you. Subscribe to see more stories of standing up, protecting what matters, and taking control when the rules are weaponized.